Hey, history buffs! Welcome back to History Crash Course. Today we're stepping back in time, over 2 millennia, to the glory days of an empire that once held sway over the known world. Yes, we're heading to Rome, the eternal city, the heart of a colossal empire, the likes of which the world had never seen before. We're talking about a time when Rome was at its zenith, when its mighty legions marched in lockstep across continents, and its eagle standard flew high over lands stretching from Britain to the borders of Persia. Ah, those were the days when Roman emperors held sway over an expanse that covered 3 continents and boasted a population of over 60 million people. But Rome was not just about military might and territorial conquest. It was a beacon of culture, a crucible where art, philosophy, law, and technology melded together to create something truly unique. The Romans built grand amphitheaters, aqueducts, and roads that stand to this day as testaments to their engineering prowess. They penned epic tales of heroism and tragedy, their literature and philosophy influencing generations of thinkers and artists. And they established a system of law and governance that still echoes in our modern societies. The economy of Rome, too, was a marvel. It thrived on a complex system of trade and taxation, with goods flowing in from every corner of the empire. Luxurious villas and bustling markets bore witness to the prosperity that the empire enjoyed at its peak. Yet, with all its grandeur and glory, the Roman Empire was not invincible. For beneath the marbled facades and gilded domes, there lay fault lines, economic disparity, political corruption, military overreach. These were the cracks that would eventually widen into gaping chasms, threatening the very foundation of Rome. No empire, no matter how powerful, can stand forever. The same was true for Rome. Its glory days were numbered, and the sun that had once risen on a golden age of Roman supremacy was beginning to set. But even the mightiest empires have cracks in their foundation. So, what brought down this titan, you might ask? Was it a horde of barbarians? Excess decadence? Or perhaps, as some tall tales would have you believe, a poor leadership choice leading to a fiddle-playing emperor who couldn't be bothered to put down his instrument even as Rome burned? Well, let's debunk some myths. First off, the tale of Emperor Nero fiddling while Rome burned is a catchy story, but it's just that, a story. In fact, the fiddle wasn't even invented until over 1,000 years after Nero's time. He might have been strumming a lyre, but that's a debate for another day. The truth is, the fall of the Roman Empire wasn't a sudden event caused by one disastrous decision or even one terrible leader. It was a slow, gradual process that took place over hundreds of years. And it wasn't just one factor that was responsible, but a complex interplay of internal and external factors. Let's start with the internal struggles. Rome had its share of power struggles, economic woes, and social unrest. Imagine a real-life Game of Thrones, but with togas and without dragons. The empire was constantly in a state of flux, with emperors regularly overthrown or assassinated. This instability made it difficult for the empire to respond effectively to external threats. Speaking of external threats, Rome had plenty of those as well. Barbarian tribes like the Goths and the Huns were constantly knocking at the gates, ready to take advantage of any sign of weakness. These weren't just mindless hordes, but organized groups with their own strategies and tactics. They saw an opportunity and they seized it, repeatedly attacking the empire's borders and eventually breaking through. But it wasn't just internal strife and external threats that brought down Rome. The world was changing, and the empire found it hard to adapt. As Christianity rose, it challenged the traditional Roman pantheon and created further divisions. Trade routes shifted, bypassing Rome and reducing its economic power. And then there was the challenge of managing such a vast empire. Rome stretched from the British Isles to the Middle East, and from the Rhine to the Sahara. That's a lot of territory to control, and the Romans struggled to do it effectively. The empire became overstretched, its resources drained, and it simply couldn't hold itself together. So think of the fall of the Roman Empire like a blockbuster clinging to VHS while Netflix took over. It was an old giant struggling to keep up with a changing world. It was not one single event, but a series of slow, gradual changes and challenges that ultimately led to its downfall. The fall of Rome wasn't due to a single catastrophic event or a single bad decision. It was a complex process that took place over centuries, involving a mix of internal struggles, external threats in a changing world. Just like Blockbuster, Rome couldn't adapt to the changing times and was eventually left behind. The fall wasn't a sudden drop, more like a slow fade. Picture a majestic painting gradually losing its vibrancy, its details blurring over many generations. That's the fall of the Roman Empire. It wasn't one cataclysmic event, but a series of tremors, shocks, and shifts that eventually brought the empire to its knees. But remember, when one chapter ends, another begins. And so, from the ashes of Rome, new powers began to rise. The Visigoths, the Vandals, the Ostrogoths, the Franks, the Lombards. Sounds like a roll call of barbarian tribes, doesn't it? Well, these were the new kids on the block, the upstarts who carved out kingdoms from the carcass of the Roman Empire. These nascent nations, these fledgling fiefdoms, were the seeds of what would become the powerful states of medieval Europe. But it wasn't just about territorial shifts. The fall of Rome triggered a profound cultural transformation. The classical learning of the Romans didn't disappear overnight. In fact, it was preserved, often in monasteries and scriptoria dotted across Europe. But this knowledge also evolved, was interpreted anew, and infused with the ideas of the so-called barbarians and the rising tide of Christianity. This fusion of the old and the new, of Roman, Christian, and barbarian thought, would eventually give birth to the intellectual and cultural explosion we know as the Renaissance. And what of Rome itself? Did it simply fade into oblivion? Not quite. Its influence, its imprint, is still felt today. Roman law, for instance, forms the bedrock of many modern legal systems. Concepts like innocent until proven guilty, equality before the law, and the right to a fair trial are all Roman in origin. Similarly, Roman engineering prowess left us a legacy of roads, aqueducts, bridges, and buildings, some of which still stand today. Ever marveled at the site of the Colosseum, the Pantheon, or the Pont de Garde? These are all testament to the ingenuity of Roman architects and engineers. And let's not forget language. Our alphabet? That's Roman. Many English words have Latin roots. Even the names of our planets are Roman. Moreover, Latin, the language of the Romans, evolved into the Romance languages we know today: Italian, Spanish, French, Portuguese, and Romanian. In short, Rome's fall was not the end. It was a transformation, a metamorphosis, a reconfiguration. The Roman Empire may have crumbled, but its spirit, its essence lived on, seeping into the fabric of the societies that followed. So in a way, every time we drive on a road, cross a bridge, enter a court of law, or even jot down a note, we're echoing the Romans. We're all Romans now, kind of. So the fall of the Roman Empire wasn't just a downer ending. It was a seismic shift, a turning point that reshaped the world, a tale of human resilience and adaptability. The empire's collapse, far from being a sudden cataclysm, was a slow burn, a gradual transformation that continues to echo through the centuries. As we've seen today, the fall of Rome wasn't simply about barbarians at the gates or emperors strumming lyres. It was a complex web of internal struggles, external threats, and a rapidly changing world. Power struggles, economic woes, and social unrest gnawed at the empire from within. Meanwhile, the Goths and Huns, like waves of warriors, crashed against the Roman shore. Elsewhere, Christianity rose, trade routes shifted, and Rome, like a blockbuster in a Netflix world, struggled to adapt. But the fall of Rome wasn't just an end, it was a beginning of sorts. From the ashes of Rome, new kingdoms and empires emerged, laying the groundwork for medieval Europe. Knowledge and learning were preserved, transformed, and eventually led to the Renaissance and beyond. Roman law, architecture, even our alphabet are still with us today. We're all Romans now, in a way. What can we learn from this? Well, history is not just about the past, it's a mirror, a guidebook, a toolbox for navigating the present. Understanding the fall of Rome can help us see the cracks in our own societies, the threats at our gates, the changes we struggle to adapt to. It can help us avoid fiddling while our own metaphorical empires face challenges. But most of all, it reminds us that empires rise and fall, societies change and evolve, but the human spirit endures. We adapt, we transform, we pick up the pieces and build anew. That's the real lesson of Rome, the real power of history. Until next time, keep crashing through history.